The mother dropped to her knees before she even touched the key. The neighbors fell silent. The children stood frozen, staring at that object shining in Tyson Fury's hand, unable to understand if this was real or a dream. He didn't say a word. He just extended the key, and in that instant the entire street held its breath. Nobody knew if this was an impossible gift or the end of a broken promise. 3 days earlier, nobody in that family imagined they would be seen. Not by the world, not by him. The Hargrove family lived crammed into a single rented room behind a scrapyard on the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan. The room smelled of rust and engine oil, a constant reminder that they were surviving at the very edge of society's forgotten corners. Christopher Hargrove, 38 years old with hands that showed decades of hard labor, had stopped sleeping inside weeks ago. He spent his nights in their battered Ford Taurus, parked just outside the scrapyard gates, telling his wife Ilara it was because he snored too loudly. Everyone knew the truth. There simply wasn't enough space for 4 people in that tiny room. Ilara Hargrove was 35 but looked 50. The stress of keeping her children fed, clean and hopeful had carved deep lines into her face. Every morning she woke at 5 to walk Jonas and Mira 3 miles to the public school, then walked back to clean houses for families who had what she once had: a real home, stability, dignity. Jonas was 12, small for his age, with eyes that held too much understanding of adult problems. His sister Mira was 9, still young enough to believe that tomorrow might be better, still innocent enough to draw pictures of houses with gardens and trees, houses that existed only in her imagination. The Hargrove family hadn't always lived like this. 2 years ago, they owned a modest 3-bedroom house in a working-class neighborhood. Christopher worked at an automotive plant, Ilara part-time at a local library. They weren't wealthy, but they were stable. They were safe. Then Christopher's brother Marcus asked him to co-sign a business loan. Brothers help brothers, Christopher thought. Family comes first. He signed the papers without reading the fine print, trusting blood over common sense. Marcus's business failed within 6 months. The creditors came for Christopher. The legal battles drained their savings, then their home. By the time the courts finished processing the foreclosure, the Hargroves had nothing left but each other, and a growing sense that the universe had turned against them. That morning started like every other. Ilara woke before dawn, heated water on the small electric burner they'd bought at a thrift store, and tried to make instant oatmeal feel like a real breakfast. Christopher came in from the car, his back aching from another night, twisted in the driver's seat, his face showing the strain of a man who felt he'd failed his family in every way that mattered. "Daddy, your neck is all red again," Mira said, noticing the marks from where he'd slept against the seatbelt. "Just a little stiff, princess," Christopher replied, forcing a smile. "Nothing a good stretch won't fix." Jonas said nothing, just ate his oatmeal and watched his father with that too-knowing expression that broke Christopher's heart every single day. At 7:30 there was a knock at the door, not the gentle tap of a neighbor or friend, but the harsh official knock of someone with authority and bad news. Ilara opened the door to find a man in a cheap suit holding a clipboard. Behind him stood a police officer, present to ensure things stayed peaceful. "Ilara Hargrove?" the man asked, though he clearly already knew the answer. "Yes. I'm serving notice of eviction. You have 48 hours to vacate these premises. All belongings must be removed. Any items left behind will be disposed of." The words hit like physical blows. Ilara felt the room spin slightly. "But we paid this month's rent. We paid on time." "The property has been sold," the man explained without emotion. "New owners are demolishing the scrapyard to build condominiums. All tenants received notice 3 months ago." "We never received any notice," Christopher said, appearing behind his wife. "That's not my concern. Legal notice was sent to this address. You have 48 hours. The man left. The police officer gave them a sympathetic look, but said nothing. What could he say? He was just doing his job. Christopher closed the door and leaned against it, his face in his hands. Ilara stood frozen in the center of the room. Jonas and Mira watched their parents with wide, frightened eyes. "Where will we go?" Mira asked in a small voice. Nobody had an answer. That afternoon, while Ilara tried to figure out which of their few possessions they could actually take with them, Christopher walked through the scrapyard looking for the owner. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe there was more time. Maybe there was anything other than the abyss that seemed to be opening beneath their feet. He found the scrapyard owner, a gruff man named Earl, in his office surrounded by papers. "Earl, please, there has to be something we can do. We need more time." Earl looked up, and for a moment Christopher saw genuine sympathy in his eyes. "Chris, I'm sorry. I really am. But the developers already own everything. I'm getting kicked out too. We're all getting kicked out." "Where are people going?" "Shelters, mostly. Some folks got family in other cities. Most just, I don't know, man, most just disappear." Christopher left the office feeling like he was drowning. The automotive plant had laid him off 3 months ago. His unemployment checks barely covered food. Their car was on its last legs. They had $11 in their bank account and nowhere to go. He walked back to find Ilara sitting on the floor, sorting through their belongings. She'd made 3 piles: essentials, maybes, and things they'd have to leave behind. "We can fit the essentials in the car," she said without looking up. "The rest, we'll have to leave." "Where are we going to go?" "There's a family shelter downtown. I called. They might have space in a few days." "A few days, Ilara? We have 48 hours. "I know," she whispered. "I know." That evening, as the sun set over Detroit, casting long shadows across the scrapyard, the Hargroves sat together on the floor of their tiny room. Nobody spoke. There was nothing left to say. Jonas broke the silence. "Is this because of Uncle Marcus?" Christopher flinched. "It's not your uncle's fault, son. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," Jonas said with the brutal honesty of children. "He borrowed money he couldn't pay back, and now we're losing everything." "Jonas," Ilara said sharply, "that's enough. Why? Why can't we say it? Why do we have to pretend everything's going to be okay when it's not?" Mira started crying. Ilara pulled her close. Christopher stood up and walked outside, unable to face the truth in his son's eyes. He stood in the darkness, looking at the rusted metal and broken machinery that surrounded their temporary home, and wondered how his life had come to this. He'd worked hard every day of his adult life. He'd tried to be a good father, a good husband, a good man. Where had it all gone wrong? A car drove slowly past the scrapyard entrance. Christopher barely noticed. Cars drove past all the time, but this car slowed down, then stopped, just beyond the gates. Christopher squinted into the darkness but couldn't make out much. Just a dark luxury vehicle, completely out of place in this neighborhood. After a moment, the car drove away. Inside the room, Ilara was putting the children to bed. There was no bedtime story tonight. No cheerful goodnight. Just exhaustion and fear and the terrible knowledge that in 2 days they wouldn't even have this. Later that night, after the children finally fell asleep, Ilara and Christopher lay awake in the darkness. "What are we going to do?" Ilara whispered. "I don't know. We can't take the kids to a shelter, Chris. Have you seen those places? They're dangerous. There are people with serious problems. Mira's too young. Jonas is too—" "I know. So what do we do?" "I said I don't know." Christopher's voice rose slightly, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry. I don't have the answers, Ilara. I don't know how to fix this." They lay in silence, listening to their children breathe, each lost in their own desperate thoughts. Outside, unnoticed by anyone in the Hargrove family, the dark car had returned. It parked in the shadows across the street, its engine silent, its occupant watching. The next morning brought no solutions, only the crushing weight of time running out. 48 hours had become 36, then 24. The countdown felt like a bomb ticking toward detonation. Ilara spent the morning trying to find anywhere that would take a family of 4 immediately. Every shelter was full. Every low-income housing program had waiting lists months or years long. Every friend or distant relative she called either couldn't help or didn't answer. Christopher drove the Taurus through Detroit, looking for any kind of opportunity. Day labor jobs that might pay cash, cheap motels that might negotiate a weekly rate. Anything. But it was like the universe had decided they were finished and was just waiting for them to accept it. That afternoon, something strange happened. Jonas came running back from the corner store where Ilara had sent him for bread. "Mom, Dad, there was a man watching our place." "What man?" Christopher asked, immediately alert. "I don't know, tall guy. He was just standing across the street staring at our room. When I looked at him, he didn't look away or anything. Just kept staring." "What did he look like?" "Big. Really big. Like tall and wide. He was wearing a hoodie, so I couldn't see his face much." Christopher went outside to look, but whoever Jonas had seen was gone. Probably just someone from the neighborhood, Christopher told himself. Nothing to worry about. But that night it happened again. Ilara was walking back from the gas station bathroom, the only place nearby with running water, when she noticed someone standing in the shadows near the scrapyard entrance. The figure was large, imposing, but perfectly still, just watching. "Hello?" Ilara called out, trying to keep the fear from her voice. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. After a long moment, it turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Ilara hurried back to their room, her heart pounding. She told Christopher what she'd seen, and for the first time, real fear crept into their situation. Were they being watched? Why? By whom? That night, as the family tried to sleep with less than 24 hours remaining before eviction, none of them noticed the dark car parked once again across the street. Inside the car, Tyson Fury sat with his phone, scrolling through a social media post that had reached him 3 days earlier. It was a local news story about families being displaced by development, featuring a brief interview with Ilara Hargrove. She'd been so dignified, so determined not to show weakness, even as the interviewer asked increasingly invasive questions about their situation. But it was something Jonas had said, caught on camera when he didn't realize anyone was listening, that had grabbed Fury's attention. "My dad says champions never give up, even when they're losing. I guess we're all champions now." Fury had grown up in similar circumstances. He knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be poor, to watch your parents try to hold everything together while the world fell apart around them. He'd been watching the Hargroves for 3 days now, confirming their story, making sure this wasn't a scam or a setup. What he'd seen convinced him. This was a real family in real crisis, and they were exactly the kind of people who deserved help but would never ask for it. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would make his move. But not yet. Not until he was absolutely certain. As dawn broke on what would be the Hargroves' final day in the scrapyard room, Christopher woke to find a note that had been slipped under their door during the night. It read, "Some fights aren't won in the ring. Don't give up yet." There was no signature, no explanation. Just those 2 sentences, in neat handwriting. Christopher showed it to Ilara. They both stared at it, trying to understand what it meant, who had sent it, and whether it was genuine hope or just another cruel joke from a universe that seemed determined to break them. At that moment, neither of them could possibly imagine that their lives were about to change forever. The morning of eviction day arrived with cruel sunshine and clear blue skies, as if the universe itself was mocking the Hargrove family's despair. By 8 in the morning, they'd packed what little they could fit into the Taurus. 3 garbage bags of clothes, a box of Mira's drawings, Jonas's soccer ball, a few kitchen items. Everything else they owned lay in a sad pile on the ground, waiting to be thrown away. Earl from the scrapyard had given them permission to leave their things there until the afternoon, a small mercy that only delayed the inevitable. Christopher stood by the car trying to figure out how 4 people would fit among the bags and boxes. The math wasn't working. Someone would have to hold things on their lap. They'd have to find a place to park where the police wouldn't hassle them. Then what? How do you live in a car with 2 children? "Chris," Ilara called from the doorway of their now empty room. Her voice had a strange quality to it. Not panic exactly, but something close. "There's someone here." Christopher turned to see a man approaching through the scrapyard. He was massive, easily 6'9", with a presence that seemed to make the air around him different somehow. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a simple jacket, but he moved with the confidence of someone who owned whatever space he occupied. Jonas recognized him first. "That's the guy from yesterday, the one who was watching." The stranger stopped about 10 feet away, keeping a respectful distance. Up close, Christopher could see he was younger than he'd first appeared, maybe late 30s with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Christopher Hargrove?" the man asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Tyson Fury." The name hung in the air for a moment before recognition dawned. Christopher had watched boxing when he was younger. He knew exactly who Tyson Fury was. The former heavyweight champion of the world, the Gypsy King, one of the most famous athletes in the world. "Hi, what are you doing here?" Christopher managed to ask. "I heard about your situation," Fury said simply. "Thought I'd come see for myself." Ilara had joined them now, with Jonas and Mira peeking out from behind her. Nobody quite knew what to say. The situation was so surreal that it felt like they'd somehow slipped into someone else's life. "Mr. Fury," Ilara began, "we don't need charity. We're going to be fine." Fury smiled slightly. "With respect, Mrs. Hargrove, I grew up in a trailer in Ireland with 11 siblings. I know what we're going to be fine looks like, and this isn't it." His directness was somehow refreshing. No false sympathy, no performative concern, just honest recognition of a bad situation. "Why are you here?" Christopher asked again. "Because I saw a video 3 days ago of your wife talking to a reporter. And I saw your son say something when he thought nobody was listening. He said his father told him champions never give up. That stuck with me." Jonas's eyes went wide. He'd had no idea anyone had heard him. "I've been watching your family for 3 days," Fury continued, and at their alarmed expressions he quickly added, "Not in a creepy way, just making sure your story was real. Making sure you were who you appeared to be." "And what did you decide?" Ilara asked, a note of challenge in her voice. "I decided that you're exactly the kind of people who deserve better than what life's given you. I decided that maybe I could help, if you'll let me." "Help how?" Christopher was skeptical. He'd heard promises before. People loved to talk about helping. Actually doing it was different. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about, but not here, and not now. I need to know something first." "What?" Fury looked directly at Christopher, then at Ilara, then at the children. "I need to know if you're willing to accept help, real help, because what I'm thinking about doing is going to change your lives completely, but only if you're ready for that change." There was something in the way he said it that made Christopher's pulse quicken. This wasn't about a handout or a night in a hotel. This was something bigger. "What kind of change?" Ilara asked carefully. "The kind that means you stop surviving and start living again," Fury replied. "But I need to know you're serious. I need to know you won't waste what I'm offering." Christopher felt a surge of anger at that. "We've never wasted anything in our lives. Everything we've lost was taken from us, not thrown away." "I know," Fury said softly. "That's why I'm here. But I've been in the position to help people before, and I've learned that wanting help and being ready for help are two different things. Some people are so broken by what happened to them that they can't accept a new beginning even when it's handed to them." "We're not broken," Jonas said suddenly, stepping forward. "We're just stuck. There's a difference." Fury looked at the 12-year-old boy with something like respect. "You're right, there is a difference. So here's what's going to happen. I'm leaving now, but I'm coming back tomorrow morning. When I come back, I'm going to offer you something. And you're going to have to decide right then whether you want it or not. No thinking it over, no discussing it. Just yes or no." "That's not fair," Ilara protested. "How can we decide without knowing what you're offering?" "Because the biggest decisions in life are always about trust, not information," Fury replied. "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., I'll be back." He turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. Where are you planning to spend tonight?" Christopher and Ilara exchanged glances. They still hadn't figured that out. "That's what I thought," Fury said. He pulled out his wallet and handed Christopher $500 in cash. "There's a motel about 2 miles from here. Clean place, family run. Tell them Mike sent you. They'll give you a room for a couple nights with that." "We can't accept," Ilara began. "It's not about accepting. It's about getting through tonight so you can be here tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. Don't be late." He walked away before they could argue further, disappearing through the scrapyard gates and into a vehicle none of them had noticed before. A dark SUV with tinted windows. The Hargroves stood in stunned silence. "Did that just happen?" Jonas asked. "I think so," Christopher replied, staring at the cash in his hand. "What do we do?" Ilara asked. Christopher looked at his wife, then at his children, then at the pile of belongings they were about to abandon. "We find that motel. We get through tonight, and tomorrow morning we find out what Tyson Fury wants to give us." That evening, in a clean but modest motel room, the Hargroves experienced their first moment of peace in weeks. There was a real bed, a bathroom with hot water, a television, space to breathe. Mira took the longest shower of her life while Jonas watched cartoons. Christopher and Ilara sat on the edge of the bed, holding hands, not speaking, just being. "Do you think it's real?" Ilara finally asked. "I don't know, but we'll find out tomorrow. What if it's too good to be true? Then at least we'll have had tonight a real roof, real beds. That's more than we had this morning." That night, for the first time in months, all 4 Hargroves slept deeply. No stress, no fear, just rest. But across the city, Tyson Fury wasn't sleeping. He was making phone calls, arranging things, putting pieces in place for what he'd planned. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was something he'd been working on for 3 days, since the moment he'd seen that video. The next morning, at exactly 7 a.m., a knock came at the motel room door. Christopher opened it to find Fury standing there, dressed casually, but somehow looking more present than anyone Christopher had ever met. "Ready?" Fury asked. "Ready for what?" "Follow me." The Hargroves piled into their Taurus and followed Fury's SUV through the streets of Detroit. They drove for about 20 minutes, leaving the rough neighborhoods behind and entering an area Christopher vaguely recognized as middle-class residential. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained houses, children's bikes in driveways. This was the kind of neighborhood the Hargroves used to live in before everything fell apart. Fury's SUV pulled up in front of a modest two-story house with blue siding and white trim. It wasn't large or fancy, but it was clean and well-kept, with a small front yard and a porch. Fury got out and walked to the Hargroves' car. "Come on out." They followed him up the driveway. Christopher noticed a "sold" sign in the front yard, recent enough that the edges weren't weathered. Fury stopped at the front door. "This is a 3-bedroom house, 2 bathrooms, finished basement, small backyard with a deck. It's in decent shape. Needs some minor work, but nothing major." "Why are you showing us this?" Ilara asked, though her heart was already starting to race with an impossible hope. Fury reached into his pocket and pulled out a key, a simple silver house key that caught the morning light. "I bought this house 3 days ago," he said quietly. "I bought it for you." The words didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air like a foreign language that required translation. "What?" Christopher whispered. "This house belongs to your family now. It's yours. No mortgage, no rent, no strings attached. It's just yours." Ilara's knees buckled. Christopher caught her, but he was shaking too. Jonas and Mira stood frozen, not understanding what was happening, but sensing its enormity. "You bought us a house?" Christopher's voice cracked. "I didn't buy you a house," Fury corrected gently. "I removed an obstacle. The house is just a house. What matters is that you get to stop surviving and start living. Your kids get to have their own rooms. Your wife gets to stop worrying about where you'll sleep. You get to be a father again instead of just a survivor." Tears were streaming down Ilara's face. Christopher was crying too, not even trying to hide it. Jonas grabbed his sister's hand tightly. Fury held out the key. "This is yours, take it." Christopher reached out with a trembling hand. His fingers closed around the key, and in that moment it felt like the weight of 2 years of struggle and fear and desperation suddenly lifted from his shoulders. "Why?" he managed to ask through his tears. "Why us? Why would you do this?" Fury smiled. "Because 18 years ago I was a troubled kid living in poverty, and a boxing trainer named Jimmy saw something in me worth investing in. He didn't have much, but he gave me time and attention and belief. He changed my life. Since then I've been looking for ways to pay that forward." He looked at Jonas and Mira. "And because your son said something that reminded me why I do what I do. He said his father taught him that champions never give up. Well, I'm here to tell you that sometimes champions need help too, and there's no shame in that." Neighbors had started to come outside, drawn by the commotion. Some recognized Fury. Others just sensed that something significant was happening. Fury addressed them all. "This is the Hargrove family. They're your new neighbors. I'd appreciate it if you'd make them feel welcome." One by one, people approached to introduce themselves, to shake hands, to welcome the family to the neighborhood. The moment was overwhelming in its kindness. Later, after Fury had left and the excitement had died down, the Hargroves stood inside their new home. It was empty of furniture but full of possibility. Mira ran from room to room, exclaiming over each discovery. Jonas opened every closet and cabinet, still not quite believing it was real. Christopher and Ilara stood in the living room, holding hands, crying and laughing at the same time. "How do we even begin to thank him?" Ilara asked. "I don't think we can," Christopher replied. "I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that we take this gift and we use it. We build a life here. We make sure our kids grow up knowing that good things can happen to good people." That night, the Hargroves slept on the floor of their new house, using blankets from the motel and their garbage bags of clothes as pillows. They'd never been more comfortable. And somewhere across the city, Tyson Fury received a text message. It was a photo of the Hargrove family in their empty living room, all 4 of them smiling, holding the house key together. The message below it read, "Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. We will make you proud. We will pay this forward. We will never forget what you've done. Champions help champions. We won't let you down." Fury smiled and set his phone down. Some victories didn't require a ring or a belt or a cheering crowd. Some victories were quiet and personal and changed lives in ways that would ripple forward for generations. The Hargrove family would go on to thrive. Christopher would find work at a new automotive plant. Ilara would return to college and eventually become a social worker, dedicating her life to helping families in crisis. Jonas would graduate high school with honors and attend university on a full scholarship. Mira would become an artist whose work celebrated resilience and hope. But all of that was still to come. On this night, they were simply a family that had been given a second chance, and that was enough.